Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we are diving headfirst into a really strange, really profound scientific mystery. It's all about what happens when you start looking at the gaps, the pauses, the silences that science usually just brushes aside.
All right, so let's get right into it with a question that might sound, well, a little backwards. But this question is right at the heart of a huge scientific puzzle, and it's one that really makes you rethink how we measure and even understand life itself.
So our story kicks off with a marine biologist named Maren Dalgaard, and she decided to study one of the most common, kind of overlooked creatures you can imagine, the simple blue mussel. See, she had this belief that the things nobody bothers to really look at, those are the things that show you just how wrong your questions have been all along.
And as she is watching these mussels day in and day out, she spots something that literally everyone else had just completely missed. It wasn't activity, but it wasn't exactly rest either. It was this totally unique state that she ended up calling stilling. Think of it as a kind of active, open-ended listening to the world. Now, you've got to understand this was a huge shift in thinking. I mean, her colleagues, they were all busy measuring things like filtration rates, counting how often the mussels opened and closed. But Maren, she got totally obsessed with the moments they just stopped. She was focused on the absence of doing anything.
Okay, so what did her supervisor think?
Well, he basically just dismissed it all, called it meaningless noise in the data, a null state that wasn't worth anyone's time. But Maren, she had a hunch. She suspected that what everyone was writing off as noise was actually a signal hiding in plain sight. So what's the big deal? What actually makes stilling different from just, resting? Well, think about it like this. When a mussel is resting or trying to defend itself, its shell is shut tight. But during the stilling state, the valves are actually slightly open. The mussel isn't doing anything to the water. It's not filtering, not extracting. It's just being with it. It's a totally different mode. And get this, to even investigate this, she had to build her own instruments from scratch. Why? Because all the standard lab equipment was designed to answer the old questions, not the new ones she was asking. So with her custom-made listening machine, she discovered something amazing. During stilling, the mussels weren't silent at all. Nope. They were producing this super clear, very specific signal right at 37 hertz. She even wrote it down in her notebook, and it's so profound. She said, "This is not silence. It is a different kind of sound." You see, this wasn't just a lack of activity. It was a whole different kind of activity. This was way bigger than just mussels. This was like discovering a new way of being that our science literally didn't even have words for yet. But as you can probably guess, the scientific establishment, they were not convinced. Not at all. For them, the logic was simple. If you can't measure it with our standard tools, well then, it's not really happening. But Maren, she basically dedicated her whole life's work to that exact gap, the space between what is happening and what our instruments are built to measure. All right, so this is where a brilliant idea smacks right into a brick wall of institutional resistance. It's that classic story, right, where a personal discovery comes up against a much bigger systemic problem. I mean, her grant applications were just rejected one after another. And the feedback she got was brutal. They weren't just questioning her methods. They were questioning her actual judgment as a scientist. Her work was basically labeled unscientific just because it didn't fit neatly into the boxes they already had. And this really gets to a core problem in science, something the source material calls the violence of method. It's a powerful idea. It's not just that our tools have limits. It's when the whole system decides that anything it can't find must not exist. It's like you're killing a brand new question by forcing it to be asked in a language that it just can't survive in. But here's where the story gets really wild. Maren wasn't alone. It turns out that other scientists working completely on their own in totally different fields were accidentally stumbling onto the exact same pattern. Okay, check this out. Over in Austria, there's a mycologist studying slime molds. We're talking single-celled organisms, no brain, nothing. And he finds that when they have to make a complex choice, they enter this still, resonant state and start putting out a 12 hertz signal. He actually called it concentration. Then, all the way over in India, an oceanographer discovers that when a coral reef is under serious stress, like from bleaching, the whole colony starts to produce this coherent sound, a signal at 23 hertz. And this acoustic coherence, as she called it, seemed to be directly tied to whether or not the coral would survive.
And it doesn't stop there. In Japan, a primatologist documents this incredible phenomenon she named Quiet Mountain. Whole troops of macaque monkeys would, all at once, just fall into this shared, synchronized state of calm. There was no obvious trigger, no threat. It was like a collective reset button that just lowered everyone's stress levels. So, when you lay it all out like this, it's pretty mind-blowing, right? You've got mussels, slime molds, coral, macaques, even wolf packs. I mean, we're talking about creatures from completely different branches of the tree of life, and yet they are all showing the same fundamental pattern. That's not a coincidence. That points to some kind of universal principle at play here. So with all this evidence piling up from all these different fields, you need a unifying theory, right? Someone to connect the dots. And that new theory, believe it or not, came from a totally unexpected place: physics. A physicist named Lake Chayaporn came along and proposed something truly groundbreaking. He said, what if stilling isn't a behavior? What if it's something more fundamental? He theorized that it's a physical phase transition. You know, like water turning to ice. A change of state that's just available to any complex living system.
And he broke it down into 3 simple steps. So first, you have what he calls a broadband state. That's when all the individual parts of a system are kind of doing their own thing, creating a lot of random noise. Then, step 2, the system goes through this super fast system-wide change. And finally, step 3, it slips into a narrowband state, where the entire system is vibrating together as one single coherent signal. It's beautiful, really.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us? What's the big takeaway here? Well, this whole new science of stilling, it completely changes our idea of what it even means to observe the world. What it's suggesting is that the observer, the scientist, or you, or me, we're not detached from the experiment. We're participants, and our own state of attention, it isn't just a source of bias that you need to get rid of. It's actually an instrument, one that you can tune. Your ability to really pay attention can either unlock the truth or hide it completely. There's this fantastic quote that just nails this idea perfectly. It's from the grandmother of one of the botanists in the research group. Someone asked her, "How long do you wait?" And she replied, "Until you stop waiting." Wow. I mean, that points to a whole different kind of knowledge, right? One that doesn't come from pushing and measuring, but from this deep, patient state of just attending. And that really leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought to chew on. Maren Dalgaard found a whole universe of meaning just by looking at what everyone else thought was nothing. So, in our world, which is just saturated with noise and constant activity, what might we discover about the world, about ourselves, if we could just learn how to really listen to the silence?